So, welcome to another Punchy Kicky podcast. And tonight, we're going to be focusing a little bit more in the nether realm. And instead of me telling him to get over here, I'm just going to sort of welcome him to the podcast. Welcome, MarktheShark. It's been a while. We've been trying to get this together. And finally, this evening, we got it right. So, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's been good to be here. I know work's been just too busy, man. We've been trying to organize this for a while now, but at least we're finally here now.
So I suppose we've got to start it off this way. I was introduced to you officially as MarktheShark. So most of your friends and your family know you as Mark Sammy. Those that you've finished in the nether realm know you as MarktheShark. Where does the nickname come from?
So I initially started off as X-Ray 92. I think most of the guys that don't know MarktheShark know me officially by that name. That name came about back in the Mortal Kombat 10 days. So I started back in Mortal Kombat 10. We had a local tournament held here by Telkom Gaming back in 2016, maybe 14, somewhere around there. And that was my first time that I needed a nickname because it was my first time getting into the gaming scene. And I haven't had a game before that. And MKX had this mechanic called an X-Ray. And I was like, well, it's a pretty cool mechanic, sounds cool, looks cool. And I just went with that name. From there, built on into MK11. The name MarktheShark kind of came into maybe the second year of Mortal Kombat 11.
Okay.
The community basically gave me the name. So the guys knew me as Mark. And they're like, well, this guy's a shark. He's beating everybody. The guys can't touch. And then from there, the guys just tagged me, MarktheShark. And from there, I just kept the name. I was like, let me run with it. The guys know me by that. So the community basically gave me the name.
Oh, that gives it a lot more credibility, doesn't it? As opposed to you trying to justify why you call yourself something. If the community's giving it to you, then hey, hold on. But I suppose that adds another problem to it. Now you have to stick up to this name, and you've got to live up to it every single time you step in front of the computer.
Yeah, it started off with me winning. What was it? One of the tournaments we had locally. I can't remember which one it was, but ever since that tournament, it was pressure afterwards for me to, just to keep up and keep my name there. Every time I'm in a tournament, the guys are like, you got to watch out for this guy. You got to place every tournament that you're in. So the pressure is always there. The moment you enter, it's expected of you to place somewhere in the top 3.
Now, tell me, one of the other things that I found very interesting about you in just getting to know you a little bit more ahead of this discussion, your preference is NetherRealm Studios games. Why?
They're just very flashy.
Okay.
So I used to play the games for fun, and I always used to like Mortal Kombat back in the day as well. Like I used to go to the arcades and play Mortal Kombat with my friends, and nothing competitively, just do the random things that we normally do. So I liked it from back then. It was just very flashy with the brutalities and the fatalities. So I just like the games. So I just stuck with it. I did dabble into Street Fighter. So Street Fighter was one of the games a friend of mine introduced me to as well. So I did go a little bit into Street Fighter 4 and 5, but nothing too big.
Okay. I've heard, and obviously don't give it a lot of credibility, but there's a little segment of let's say the snowflake parents that talk about Mortal Kombat as being highly graphic, a lot of violence, graphic violence, the kind of stuff kids today shouldn't be getting exposed to at an early age. MKX came out around about 2015. You got involved in it around about that era. You've migrated, obviously, to MK11, which came out, 2019, beginning of 2019. Your thoughts on those? I don't want to disrespect parent in terms of how they want to bring up their kid, but that narrative that says that Mortal Kombat is just too graphically violent for young kids.
Yeah, every fighting game at the base of it is a fighting game. You're hitting another person, no matter how good they make it look, you are hitting another person. It's just that these games, they take the graphics a bit to the next step, obviously. It's a bit more gory.
Yeah.
And I mean, kids, if they want to see that, kids are going to end up seeing it. I mean, you can try and protect them as much as you want, and, kids are going to see it. Whether it triggers violent reactions from them, I don't think so. I think if a kid is violent by nature, the game's not going to change that. Making him play a game that's violent is not going to make a kid who's calm or normal become violent. I think if they were violent by nature and they play a game like that, it's just going to make them a bit more violent. It's going to bring out what their natural traits are. But the game itself, people have the different opinions on it. My personal opinion, I think that it's okay for kids to be playing it, but I think if they're underage, obviously you got to monitor what they're doing, how they're reacting to the game. I don't think it's for everybody, and that's also the same for any other game, whether the game's gory or not. I think other fighting games as well, there are people who do get angrier as such playing these types of games. And I don't think it's just a Mortal Kombat thing just because Mortal Kombat's gory. I think every game, they can make it look nice, but beneath it all, it's the same mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. I mean, I've seen kids get absolutely hectic aggressive playing Fortnite. So I mean, like you say, if you have that tendency, the chances are you're going to get aggressive, probably even playing Pac-Man. So yeah, it's one of those things. So in terms of understanding the game itself, what specifically? I mean, you've mentioned that it's how NetherRealms puts their games together and the entire package that they come up with to showcase to the engine running it in the background. But what specifically? I mean, there were so many fighting games you could have chosen back in 2015. You delved a little bit into Street Fighter. I mean, you've obviously got Tekken out there as well. You've got Soul Calibur. You've got a myriad of other fighting games that you could have chosen. Why Mortal Kombat as your go-to game?
So for Mortal Kombat 10 specifically, it was just flashy, and that was just all I liked about it. The combo system, it was just very flashy and it looked cool. You want to just play it, even if you're not that good at it. You see other people playing it and you want to play it. Like a lot of my friends don't play the games. I don't need to understand it very technically, but they just like to watch it because it just looks so flashy. Mortal Kombat 11 went a little bit off that route, but the thing that I like about Mortal Kombat 11, it sort of became like a chess game. So it's always, you got to be one step ahead of your opponent. So you got to think what they're going to do, and you got to know what you're going to do. So there's different options available, and Mortal Kombat 11 did that very well. You got to know what your options are, what your opponent's options are, and how to counter them each step of the way. So you're not just doing things randomly. It became more like a chess game. It's what's your choice versus what's their choice, and you got to predict what they're going to do.
You've mentioned a couple of words there: chess game, technical. I mean, back in the day when these games, when arcades and games like this fighting game, side-scroller fighting games, obviously that's where it all started, came out. It was just literally for shits and giggles. We all played it. You dropped your money into the arcade machine, and it was, how long can you make that money last before the machine beats you, kind of thing. Nowadays, more and more gamers that I talk to are mentioning those words: technical, chess game. You've got to understand what your opponent can and cannot do. You've got to be thinking 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of your opponent. And I have to call you this, a semi-pro gamer, because, I mean, you work a day job. You aren't a professional gamer waking up, gaming in the morning, gaming at lunchtime, gaming in the afternoon. As a semi-pro gamer, how much work goes into it from a technical point of view to learn and understand this chess match, this game of chess where you have to be a step or two ahead of your opponent?
And it's tons of work, tons of hours. So I think in Mortal Kombat 11, I must have put close to 1,000 hours, if not more, already. into practicing, learning, playing other people, figuring out the mechanics of the game, what it can do, figuring out your different options. Just because there's so many different characters, after you learn the base mechanics, you then got to practice specifics for each character that you have to play against. So the more characters they add, the more variation there is, and then you got to practice the different options as well as different play styles for each individual. So it takes a ton of work. You got to put in. So the effort. There's a lot of effort involved.
And getting to know you and more about you in the gaming. Is there a preference in terms of the console you prefer? Is it Xbox, PlayStation as a preference? And added to that, do you have a preferred character that is your go-to that never, ever lets you down?
Yeah. So the console first. So I play basically on PlayStation and PC, but more PlayStation. And the main reason is because all of the platforms use PlayStation as the tournament standard. And that is just the main reason. So wherever you go to a tournament, there's always a PlayStation set up, So I got familiar with the controller early on, which was the main reason. Because swapping controllers, it feels like there's no difference, but there actually is. The controller sizes are different, the buttons different. So your muscle memory is different if you swap controllers, which is why I just stuck with the PS4 because that's the standard.
Okay.
As far as characters go, Scorpion's always number one that I choose. So I chose him from Mortal Kombat 10, 9, 11 as the first character. Although as the game progresses, I swap to other characters. So maybe for the first year, you'll see me play Scorpion always in a game. But afterwards, I swapped over. So for Mortal Kombat 11, it became Baraka and then Noob Saibot. So as I play more characters and get familiar with them, some feel a bit more comfortable to me than others. So now at this current stage, it's Noob Saibot, who's my number one.
Okay, so all right, so we've got our go-to there. We've got our go-to console, obviously, and all of this learning that you've put in. I mean, if I look back at, let's call it your gaming credentials. I mean, when you first started out, ACGL season 2. I mean, you came fourth, and then literally, I don't think you've seen. If there was a podium at every single one of these tournaments, you've never been off the podium to the point that you won Kahn of Africa, okay, then defended that title this year. You are the reigning Kahn for the second year in a row. I mean, you spoke about the more than 1,000 hours putting in just to, first of all, understand the game. First of all, get that muscle memory going, understand the characters, understand, what the potential is of any of your opponents to be able to come at you. But that's not it. I mean, you've got to understand defense. You've got to understand tactics. And most importantly, I'm starting to hear more and more from gamers like yourself. It's game IQ. How much time do you spend really getting into the intricacies of the game IQ and making the game literally your servant and not you being a slave to the game?
Yeah. So I'm one of the people who learns through practice. So I have a sparring partner that I usually play with, Mr. 5000. I'm not sure if you guys heard of him or not, but he's like one of the better players in Southern Africa, or rather in Southern Africa. We spar a lot. Like we've played countless hours, late nights till the next morning. And we practice and play against each other. So we don't necessarily go into very detailed intricacies, but we just play each other. And through playing each other with different characters, we just start to learn what each character does. We start to learn how to counter each character. So for me, it's just learning that way. Other people can learn by going into the training room, learning certain things with certain characters. For me, I like to learn by practice. That's just my way of learning.
One of the other things is that I mentioned earlier, as a semi-pro gamer, I mean, you've now joined the Illusion Gaming team. You're part of Illusion. How did that come about for you? That going from someone that just started gaming, probably for shits and giggles, like most kids out there, you are now part of a professional gaming setup. Where did that all start, and how did it come about?
It's pretty amazing. Like I never thought that I'd be sponsored at some point. specifically for gaming. But it started off by me just playing. Like I entered a few tournaments. The guys became aware of my name. They asked me to create a Twitter profile. There was a Prince Panther tournament that has started happening, and I never had Twitter back then. And Prince Panther is one of the guys on Twitter who's organized tournaments during the lockdown, I think, because nothing was happening. So he used to organize online tournaments. And one of the guys in the community basically messaged me and told me, go and create a Twitter profile. He'll tag me, he'll ask me to enter. And he got me into that tournament. And from there, I basically just started building a following. And eventually the guys started taking notice. So the more tournaments I won, the more people started noticing. And eventually I got approached by other people saying, or my friends started tagging other people saying, this guy needs a sponsor. He's really good at the game. He's won all of these tournaments. And then from there, just people started taking notice. And then I got approached by the Illusion team, and they were a pretty good fit for me.
I want to come back to that question. I want to ask you a question about that point that you make there, fit. But before I get there, how big a difference is it? It sounds like a silly question, but how big a difference is it going from being a young guy on their own, loving gaming, being good at it, being noticed at these tournaments, to then suddenly have an organization behind you, backing you, supporting you, and doing a lot of that organization on your behalf? How different is that?
So I think it makes a really big difference. So where Illusion comes in for me specifically is more on content creation. So one of the things that I liked to do and get into is creating content. So different teams obviously offer you different things. Mm-hmm. So there's some that promote you as a player, and some will, they'll take you to different tournaments and do different things for you. They'll some offer you salaries and whatever. But Illusion for me specifically, it was just about content creation. So I wanted to always get into content creation, push out more content. It's just hard for me to find the time because, having a day job and then juggling games, Illusion was that gateway for me to get more exposure into this entire scene. South Africa is not really that big in the fighting game community.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just getting exposure. And Illusion was the team that helped me, or is going to help me to get that exposure that I needed. So it's been a massive thing for just getting my name out there and getting exposure into, the scene.
Yeah, and I suppose having guys like Fabio and Rusty part of the team, which are very much content creation guys, is definitely going to help with that content creation in terms of not just the basic and base level content creation, but also content creation around your gaming and what successes and or failures have been in that space.
Yeah, exactly that. And, Fabio is really good at networking, so he knows a lot of people. So that was one of the good things, that he can put you in touch with so many different people that can help you gain more exposure in the scene.
My next question for you, in terms of being part of a gaming organization, you're a young guy, you've just gotten into the gaming space, relatively speaking. In your experience, what should young gamers be looking out for when they get approached by these gaming organizations? I mean, more and more guys are getting good at what it is that you're doing. Gaming is now something that kids can literally make a living out of. Maybe not here in South Africa yet, but across the ocean, across the big pond, guys are making big money at it. What are some of the things young kids should be looking out for and paying attention to when they get approached by gaming organizations like this?
So always the first thing is, don't go with your first choice. Just don't rush into it. So if someone approaches you, I understand, very exciting, you just got approached by a gaming organization. Don't just say yes. Everyone has their terms and conditions. You got to read through what they're offering you. You got to know what you need to offer them. So it's a give and take. It's not just, they don't just come and give you something for free. It's always, you offer them something and they will offer you something. So you got to weigh that pros and cons and whether what they're offering is going to be good for you. Like I said, in different stages, you might want something different from a gaming organization. But essentially, they need to be well reputed. So you need to know who they are, where they're from, how big following do they have, whether they can help you reach the following that you need if you're trying to gain following. So obviously, if it's a small gaming organization, and you have more followers than they do, chances are they're not going to get very much out of them. or they're not going to do very much for you if you already have more following than they do. So there's a lot of smaller organizations out there as well as bigger ones, but it's more just what can they offer you and what do they expect from you? Because you don't want to commit to something that you might not be able to do.
Mark, if you look 2 years from now, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now, where do you see yourself in the gaming space here in South Africa?
So, like I mentioned, content creation is big for me. So pushing out into YouTube, into Twitch, streaming, for me, it's just getting that awareness out and, just playing games, having fun. That's what I like to do. And that's the reason why I got into it in the first place. I just like to play stuff to have fun. Competing is still going to be there. I also love competing. So the next NRS title that comes out, I'm guaranteed going to be competing in that. There's no two minds about it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, at the moment, my next game is going to be King of Fighters 15, which comes out Feb. Okay. So I'm going to be playing that. But yeah, I mean, just competing, pushing out content, just doing what I love.
Man, very, very, very excited to watch how you go from strength to strength. Obviously, a big one for me is going to watch, can you defend the Kahn of Africa title 3 years defend it 2 years in a row, win it 3 years in a row. That's going to be a big one. I'm going to have to put some money down. We're going to have to get the betting community involved here and see, can MarktheShark win it 3 years in a row? There's got to be some big money in that. Maybe the odds are going to be low because you've done it 2 years in a row, but we'll see how that works out. Mark,
there's a lot of strong guys, and I'm sure they want that title.
I know for a fact they want that title. I've spoken to a couple of guys, and you have got a target on the back of your head. They want your spine out of your body. They want to take it away. They want to put it on their pedestals at home and say, there, I beat him. I took it away from him. Mark, yes, it's been great. Thanks so much for the time. It's been phenomenal getting to know you, getting to know your journey into gaming. It's going to be great watching where it goes over the next couple of years. I know the other exciting thing is that a deeper dive into Illusion Gaming is coming later on this week. I'm going to be talking to more of the Illusion crew on the Fight Sports Uncovered show. That drops on Friday. But for everyone else out there that's watching, listening, get over to Twitter and give MarktheShark a follow, or get over to YouTube and subscribe to his channel. Some fascinating stuff there, a lot of stuff that you can probably learn as a young gamer. Mark, it's been fascinating talking to you, getting to know you just a bit. It's probably not going to be the first time we talk, not the last time, definitely. We're going to chat some more. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and going to be watching out for the first person to beat your ass in the next tournament.